Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to League on Lock. The offseason, surprisingly, we still have a lot of moves to be figured out, but I think the biggest ones are behind us. And so far, I feel like you can look to two different teams and argue who won the offseason or got much bigger, much better in this offseason compared to where they were the split before. Because if you're looking at a team such as Team Liquid, they made one change that is maybe a slight upgrade, but they were already such a good team. These two squads were struggling throughout a lot of 2019 and look to be much better. We're talking Team Solo Mid and Gen.G. I think they've made the two biggest and most drastic changes and will probably fly higher in the preseason rankings than any of the other squads comparatively to where they were in 2019. So TSM, two returning members from the last season. That's it. Both of these squads actually share that. Three entirely new players coming in for TSM. It's obviously Dardoch, Biofrost, and Kabe. Bio is the familiar face from 2017 and has only really improved since then. Obviously, his rookie split was absolutely incredible, but on paper, assuming that Broken Blade and Bjergsen can kind of refine their spring form, because they both took some pretty substantial dips in the summer split, but there was a whole lot of issues going on behind the scenes with TSM. And already we've seen all these roster announcements. They're funny. They're memeing. They're getting back to the glory days of Team Solo Mid. Maybe the organization took a step back and really looked at themselves in the mirror to try and improve things. And Dardoch on TSM is something people have been waiting for multiple years, probably even before the Mike Young and Spica, Acadian, Grigg. Even before that, around Svenskeren, when he was struggling at times, people said, oh, bring on Dardoch in the almost rookie split that he had. But here he is. He's finally here. He seems completely motivated. He spent an entire split plus in the Academy League, so you know he's not going to be taking this opportunity for granted. This is the best roster he's ever been around, and I think this is... I've talked about it being the ultimate test for both of them. Dardoch proving that the toxicity issues are a thing of the past, and TSM proving that they are not constantly turning aggressive junglers into just passive wards. So it's a big opportunity for both of them. And I think we saw Dardoch on Echo Fox when he had a solid laning team around him. He was a front runner for MVP for half of the split, half of the year almost, and Echo Fox was hanging out in the very top of those regular season standings. So I think we're going to see that form of him again here with TSM in 2020. And the bottom lane that they have come in with Kabe and Bio, we've ranked them a couple of times, and already you're putting them right below Doublelift and Core JJ. This roster for TSM on paper, with everybody else moving around, every team made at least one roster change, and most of them made substantially more than that. They were complete roster overhauls, so it's a fresh start for the majority of teams in the LCS coming into the spring split. And for TSM, they look like they're getting off to the best start, because Kabe, a lot of the LEC AD carries. Overall, I would say the talent pool is better than the LCS, and he absolutely proved himself against the best of the best, whether it was Reckless or Perks. Upset, he was going toe-to-toe with every single one of these guys, and it might be an easier time over in North America. And Biofrost is probably an upgrade over Northscaren, so overall that bottom lane is only going to get better, and it doesn't matter if Dardoch gives them attention or not. Even in just the straight up 2v2, I can't see Kabe and Northscaren losing lane straight up unless it's a horrible matchup for them. So TSM looks like the changes they made are going to be huge, and they should be the front runner to go up against Team Liquid and maybe avoid losing in the quarterfinals again, which they have done 2 out of 4 times in the last 4 splits. The other team with the huge moves was obviously Gen.G over in the LCK, and they're immediately in the conversation for top 3 title contender in the LCK. Much like TSM, they only kept 2 players from the previous year. It was the one thing that worked for them throughout the entire calendar season, ruler and life in the bottom lane. And the difference here is people were expecting TSM to make big moves because you're always expecting them to do that. Gen.G, you were not expecting them to be the ones to get both Clid and BDD. Clid, all signs were pointing to him signing back with SKT, but he ends up going over to Gen.G, and we know that Peanut struggled a lot on his stint with Gen.G. He even got subbed out for Sohwan in some of these games, and the jungle position was a big issue for Gen.G. Now you bring in Clid, that is such a massive upgrade, probably a bigger upgrade even than Dardoch over Spica, Acadian, Grig, whichever three you want to throw in there. This is even a bigger upgrade for them. So Gen.G looking very solid in the jungle. The only question mark really is Rascal in the top lane. And again, people are kind of forgetting that he was incredibly consistent for pretty long stretches for Kingzone, and we're giving a lot of those players a sizable amount of leeway because of all the disaster that was going on behind the scenes with their management. And a similar case could be made for BDD in the mid lane. KT also had a terrible 2019 through and through, not even close to playoffs in either of the splits. And BDD, no, he did not look at all the same level as we were accustomed to seeing with him on Kingzone. We were consistently talking about him as the best player in the LCK or the best mid laner in Korea, definitely throughout 2018 when SKT was struggling. BDD was the best in that mid lane until, you know, guys like Chovy and Showmaker were showing up. But he was still the brightest spot for a fleeting light that was KT Rolster in 2019. Fully expect him to get back on track. He has a very consistent bottom lane around him, and at worst, a top 2 jungler in all of Korea. So BDD will be back to dominating that laning phase and outside of that and beyond as well. Gen.G, absolutely a top 2-3 team in the LCK, much like TSM. But in terms of offseason, who had the better run? I mean, it's pretty difficult to compare when they're two completely different regions. But I'm probably going with Gen.G because they had two of the biggest free agents available. They locked them both up. Kabe was a big signing for TSM, but Clid and BDD were at the very top of the list for players available in their position. So big shout out to Gen.G. They spent the money and they have a contender, at least on paper. We've got to see some games before we judge any more.